Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2024 slasher horror sequel, Terrifier 3. Now, I did like this film, uh, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the second movie. I like the second film more, but I will admit that this is probably the film in the franchise that has the best gore. It has the best practical effects. And that's saying a lot because the second film had a lot of really good practical effects in it, and at points so did the first movie. But I would say this is the one where things like really reach a whole nother level because Damien isn't just doing it himself; he's doing some of the effects work, but a lot of it's being done by these other guys as well as Tom Savini's company. And so the end result is just some absolutely jaw-dropping, gobsmacking gore. But I liked the plot more in the second film. I also felt that the second movie was better paced despite it being longer in terms of the runtime than this one. But I still enjoyed it, and I would say that it's definitely one of the better films that I've seen this year. But before I go and share more of my thoughts on Terrifier 3, I want to give a special shout out to Seth for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Terrifier 3 is directed by Damien Leone, who also directed the first two Terrifier films. And this time around, he had like a $2 million budget to work with instead of a $250,000 budget or a $55,000 budget. And the end result is something really special. Uh, this film features some really dynamic, really strong direction overall. Damien's really proving himself here. That Terrifier 2 is not just a one off, that he is really becoming a director in the horror genre that should be taken seriously and is also one of the up and coming talents when it comes to the horror genre directing wise, because like the way that he handles his lighting once again is just exemplary. The way that he deals with all the other camera techniques is just excellent. The pans, the zooms, the different camera angles, the traveling shots, the various other types of directing techniques that he utilizes here. It's just a really nice looking film, and he's really proving that he's really quite adept as well when it comes to framing his shots and building a lot of tension and genuine chills and thrills and atmosphere and mood, and really getting the most out of a low budget, because $2 million is still not really a massive budget, all things considered, for a film that got a theatrical release. And he is just really quite a master when it comes to directing practical effects heavy sequences. And in large parts, probably due to the fact that he is an effects guy. He knows how to make these effects look as realistic as possible. And so, what you get here is some incredibly visceral and just unbelievable jaw dropping gore effects. And the effects work by these other effects artists, it just shines a lot more than it would if you had a director who just doesn't really know how to direct these scenes in a way to make the gore look as realistic as possible, despite how over the top it is. Now, Damien also wrote the film, and I will give Damien a ton of credit for the massive big cojones the big balls that he has when it comes to the script. The sheer audacity and the sheer risk to have a screenplay that opens up with a massacre that includes a child getting cut up into pieces with an axe, and then also having an entire other sequence later on in the film where a whole bunch of children get blown up by a bomb is something I definitely have to give Damien credit for. It makes art, it makes Vicky, it makes the evil in this film all the more formidable and all the more unpredictable because of the fact that it's willing to go that far. It's not because it's one of those things where I'm like, "Oh my god, they killed a kid. Yay." Like no, I'm not that kind of sick-minded individual. I just appreciate it when writers are willing to go that extra length to unsettle the audience, to really keep the audience on their toes. And I think that's a really good way to showcase that whatever it is, whether it's a slasher, a villain, whether it's the blob, whether it's some other sort of force, if an alligator, if kids aren't safe, then no one is safe. And so I do really appreciate the fact that Damien was willing to go there, and he stood by that. That's honestly the main reason why no major studio agreed to finance this film. There were actual studios who were interested in financing Terrifier 3 and maybe giving Damien even more money to work with, but he was not going to budge on the brutality of the script and the fact that it actually had these sequences where these kids are also victims of art and of this evil. And I I think he definitely made the right choice because by him financing and him doing this film independently, there's no shackles. He can do whatever he wants. And I think also that's a massive benefit to the fans and to people watching the film because they get to see the vision that the director wanted in full because he's also the writer. So whatever his vision was for this film, you get to see that. There is no compromising. There is no holding back. And initially, I was on the fence about what was going on with Vicky, but I've grown to really like it. Actually, I think it adds some interesting a bit of added lore to the Terrifier franchise, especially when have that dream sequence that Sienna has where she is having a dream from the past with this Virgin Mary type character that has like a killer that's chained up that's possessed by a demon, and it's establishing that this is something that's been going on for centuries, and that you have these killers who are then utilized as these weapons of destruction, murder, and mayhem by these demonic entities who have taken over human bodies. And I like it. It's a different twist on the possession angle. And I like the idea that there's some other entity, there's some other driving force than just Art himself. I think that just makes things a lot more interesting. And it gave a lot for Vicky to do, and I felt the way that Damien wrote the Vicky character, I felt it was really good. I thought that character was sadistic and intimidating in her own right, every bit as much as Art. And I don't agree with some of the critics who have said that the Vicky scenes it seems like it just takes away from Art the Clown. Like, I don't agree with that. There's still a lot of scenes in this film where Vicky isn't anywhere to be seen, and it's just Art doing all the killing. Um, and speaking of Art, like the scenes featuring Art are an absolute blast. They are just as brutal as ever. They're just as visceral and violent and intense, but it still has that same demented charm and that same twisted sense of humor that really helps those scenes despite how depraved and how mad they are and just how just honestly stomach churning these sequences are in terms of the gore and the violence. The fact that you have this snide sense of humor about it, it really does help it because it makes it so there's something other than just the gore that is making these scenes into something worthwhile. And it gives David Howard Thornton so much to work with when it comes to his performance as Art the Clown. He was just an absolute riot in this. It was so funny. Uh, when he starts doing snow angels and the blood in the shower, I was rolling laughing. And there's a lot of other moments with him that are just so good. And I don't know if that is really due to David or it's due to Damien or a combination of the two. But whatever it is, it's a winning formula. And there's a lot of variety when it comes to the kills. I think it's absolutely insane that Art creates some kind of homemade liquid nitrogen dispenser. So it's like he takes like a fire extinguisher and turns it into something that can spray liquid nitrogen and like freeze people, and then he'll like smash the frozen body parts with a hammer while people are still awake, or he'll do stuff like create the bloodiest, goriest shower scene in cinema history, where he cuts up this couple with a chainsaw and cuts up the boyfriend in a way that even puts pieces to shame. And there's a lot of other good, inventive, creative kills in this. And just the whole idea of him dressing as Santa Claus is also fun. I really do admire and I appreciate the balls of this screenplay. Even when it comes to what's going on with Sienna and what happens to her aunt and her uncle, what happens to other people that are a part of Sienna's life. Gabby who gets lost in a hell dimension at the end, and Jonathan being killed off screen, but I don't really think he's dead. I think it's just set up for the fourth movie that he's being held captive somewhere by Art and the entity, or they'll do some Easter theme and Jonathan will come back because I don't really buy that he's dead. And if he is dead, that's kind of lame, I have to admit, especially when it comes to him dying off camera. And the fact that Jonathan didn't really reconcile with his sister, and they had this contentious connection with one another throughout the movie, which I'll get to later in terms of some of the issues that I do have with the script. I appreciate the guts, no pun intended, from Damien when it comes to making some pretty tough decisions and taking a lot of risks when it comes to this script. Other things that I really like about it is I do appreciate that Sienna, they don't kill her off. She's still just as strong of a character as before. They do the thing where she was in a mental institution or a home for the, mentally ill for a certain amount of time, and then she's out and she's dealing with PTSD and all this other sort of stuff. But I felt the way that Damien handled it, it wasn't too annoying because I think that can happen a lot when it comes to these kind of plots or these kind of characters. So I felt she didn't like change her personality dramatically to the point where she didn't seem like the same character anymore. Or she was just so distant that she wasn't even there. And I do love the fact that she gets to take out Vicky and take out Art again, although Art does wind up surviving, but she still gets to kick his ass. Um, and I like that she's still strong. She's still as strong as ever. She's still built up as a legitimate heroine, and there's none of this oh, she's just crazy, or any kind of lame twist or anything like that, or killing her off, or making her look weak, or making her a loser. They don't do like a Dewey. He doesn't do like a Dewey and Scream 5 kind of thing. Like, you don't get that where it's like, oh, Dewey's a loser and he lives in a trailer. Like, they don't do that with Sienna, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, I like the added lore that's brought into the fold when it comes to the Terrifier franchise with Vicky and the entity. Although I still don't think the head thing worked. They tried to explain it with the head having an umbilical cord or something, and the body coming to life and then killing a cop, cutting his head off. I thought that it was going to do something where, okay, he cuts his head off and then puts it on his head, and then the head morphs into Art the Clown's face, and that's how Art's able to lose his head, but come back to life. But didn't really do that. I thought that would have been cool, but instead he just holds his head on his shoulders, and then goes the headless body goes to the hospital, and the mental hospital for the criminally insane where Vicky's held at, and then takes the head after the head and Vicky kill a couple of the people who work there, including Chris Jericho, who gets ripped apart piece by piece. And the whole like, oh, they're just gonna sit there for 5 years in an abandoned house and do nothing, just for the convenience of the plot, because as soon as the 5 years are up, Sienna is released from her time at the Sunny Haven mental facility. You're kind of like, okay, all right, really. Um, but I could still kind of, deal with that. I also really like the relationship and the bond between Sienna and Gabby, who has this sisterly bond with Sienna, and I like the way that Damien wrote the interactions between the two. It was sweet. I like the stuff with Sienna and Gabby's mom as well. Uh, I felt that there were some nice scenes between the two characters. Um, Mia, well, not Mia. Mia is this other character in the movie. Um, Jess, who is Gabby's mom, and Sienna's aunt. So I think there was a nice heart to things, and I also really liked the bits that we saw during Sienna's dreams, where you get to see her as a kid talking to her dad, and her dad making the drawing of the Valkyrie, and I like that a lot as well. But I didn't really like what they did with Jonathan, or what Damien did with Jonathan. I didn't really like what he did with Jonathan, uh, especially when it comes to the stuff with him just bickering with his sister and just being reluctant to believe her. That was such a cliche, and I don't feel that drama was needed at all. And I feel the same way about her aunt and uncle thinking that she's crazy and can't be trusted. A lot of that drama just didn't really work for me, and it just felt like, I wouldn't say completely unnecessary, but it did feel like it was dragged out, and it was a big part of why this wasn't as well paced as part 2 for me, because of the fact that there's a lot of these drama moments that feel like something out of a soap opera that just don't really do anything for me. And I just wanted to see either more of Vicky and Art the Clown and their bloody rampage, or some extra stuff with Jonathan so we could have more to do. There's like a lot of this film and a lot of this story where Jonathan is just really not given a lot to do at all. So it just seems like Damien just didn't really give him that much to work with, which I think is a shame. unless he has bigger plans for him in the future, and don't know. We'll have to find out. Um, I also do not care for the fact that the pale girl, we get zero explanation at all for that character, what happened to that character. I guess it's insinuated that the same entity that possessed the pale girl possesses Vicky, but I'm like, why did you have a scene at the end of 2 where the pale girl grabs Art's head and then walks off with it? Why did you have other scenes that made it seem like the pale girl is still alive or is still, at the very least, still in our realm or close to it, if you're not gonna do anything with the pale girl? Like, I felt like Damien just basically was like, "Oh, I did the pale girl in the second movie. I'm not gonna touch upon the pale girl again. I'm not gonna do anything with the pale girl again." And it's now Vicky. And I'm like, I just didn't really feel that that was very well handled by Damien. There's this stuff with this true crime podcaster chick and her trying to get Jonathan onto the podcast, and I didn't care for that at all. It felt really on the nose when it comes to trying to do some sort of commentary about social media, and it just felt kinda lazy to me. But I felt for the most part the climax was pretty satisfying, although the setting of it just being in the living room of the aunt and uncle's house was kind of boring, especially compared to the funhouse in part 2. But I understand what Damien was trying to do there, trying to make things more at home, so to speak. And that set things up for the Terrifier Christmas tree with the guy with the uncle's severed head on top as a star, and Art putting intestines on the tree as dressing. So like I get why the decision was to make things take place in that setting, but I have to be honest, I prefer settings that are a little bit more unique than something like that, especially for a climax. Yeah, other than the fact that there's some drama that really doesn't do a whole lot for me, I don't really necessarily like the way that Jonathan is handled. There are some scenes that kind of drag on a bit too long, whether it's because of the setup or whether it's due to the way that things are edited. It's just that there are moments in this that are just kind of a little bit too lengthy and really do affect the pacing. And I think that's really one of the main issues with Terrifier 3 is that it has some pacing problems where it just when you don't have Art killing people in gory, uh, absolutely insane fashion, it's not as interesting as the drama and the character depth pieces from Terrifier 2, because Terrifier 2 was more novel. This was the first time getting to know these characters and you wanted to get to know them more. And by the time you get to 3, you already kind of know them more, and you never really had another character that could pick up the slack to keep your interest other than maybe Gabby, but it's still a young girl and there's not really a whole lot there. So I think if you're going to kill Jonathan off, if you're going to do that sort of stuff, I think you should have had somebody as a part of the cast who had their own story, had their own arc that could go alongside Sienna and Gabby's arc. And I think that definitely would have helped in terms of the pacing. But for the most part, I still think it's a pretty decent, solid script by Damien. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he has in mind for Terrifier 4. I want to see what he is going to come up with for that. I would love to see something more outlandish and over the top. I would love to see like a slasher horror fantasy version of Aliens. Like you've set it up that way. Gabby is now in some kind of hell dimension, and Sienna has vowed to find her. And so I think the fourth film should be Sienna going into the hell dimension to save Gabby. And that's where ultimately she comes face to face with the demon itself, like the actual entity uh, in hell that is controlling art and has been possessing all these people for all these centuries. And you could even do some time travel stuff where she can go back in time to the time where that Virgin Mary entity was with the chained up demon. And you could maybe even do some stuff like Waxwork 2, where now Art is chasing after her, and maybe a different character, maybe Jonathan's back, and Art is chasing after them. And it's like Waxwork 2 or Shocker, where now Art's going into different genres and Sienna's going into a different genre of film. And because it's hell, you could do anything. So I think that would be fun. There's a lot of potential with Terrifier 4 in terms of just really busting boundaries and just playing with things and just going into wild, crazy directions. And I think the setting of things happening in the real world with art and the entity, that's played its course. Like that's ran its course. I want to see some really crazy over the top shit like a Doom the video game level demons and carnage. And I think there's a lot of stuff you can do with the premise of Sienna going into hell itself to save Gabby. Now, Terrifier 3, in my opinion, also includes a pretty incredible cast. It's headed by the clown himself, David Howard Thornton, who once again is just so much fun to watch playing this character. He's having such a blast playing Art, and it's such an infectious performance as a result. He is able to showcase so much range of emotion, uh, intensity, and humor without even saying anything. And it's so impressive. It is such an impressive thing to see. And the way that he just plays this character is just so great. It really is. These films, they don't work. They're not as strong or honestly close to being as good as they are without David Howard Thornton's contributions to these films as Art the Clown. He's just amazing. He really is. In terms of being able to be so unassuming and so charming as the clown, but also intimidating and downright creepy. Uh, so he gets your guard down, but then he could also get your guard up. And that's something that isn't always the easiest thing to do when it comes to really perfecting that balance. Lauren LaVera is also lovely and just lively and as excellent as ever as Sienna. Another really strong performance by her. Samantha Scaffidi, she has more screen time here as Victoria, and man, does she nail it. She was honestly at points just as demented, just as twisted, and just as fun to watch as David Howard Thornton. But and in some ways, honestly, even more intimidating, really, surprisingly enough. Um, so I definitely want to give her a lot of credit. And she had a pretty big role in this. I felt that Margaret Anne Florence, who played Jess, Gabby's mom, I felt she did a really good job. Really liked her. I liked her chemistry with Sienna, as well as the actress who plays Gabby. And speaking of that actress, Antonella Rose, I thought she was amazing, especially for a young actor. But she did a really great job with her role. Um, Bryce Johnson was fine as Jess's husband. I also felt that Elliott Fulham was equally as fine as Jonathan, but he didn't have a lot of screen time, didn't have much to work with, so I can't really criticize his performance that much. Uh, you have some cameos from some, well-known actors. Clint Howard played a guy at the bar. You got Chris Jericho plays the orderly at the psychiatric hospital, reprising his role from the end of the second movie. Dana Roebuck plays Santa Claus. You got Tom Savini who plays a bystander who's at the mall. Um, Jason Patric who plays Sienna and Jonathan's father in the flashback. He was really good in that. I thought that was honestly one of the best things Jason Patric has done in a while, to be honest. You've also got this actress named Alexa Blair Robertson who plays Mia Cole's girlfriend, who's obsessed with the Miles County massacre. You got Mason McCartia as Cole, Jonathan's doormate, and Mia's boyfriend. I almost said girlfriend. That's definitely not their relationship. But yeah, the two of them were fine. They were decent enough. You also have Phil Falcone, who's like the producer. He plays a bus driver in this in a cameo. So yeah, there's a lot of performers in this that definitely do deliver some really good performances. This was another film in the franchise that features some really good technical merits. I mean, it's got some nice looking cinematography by George Stuber. I think the editing by Damien Leone is good but not great. I think Damien Leone, he really could benefit from hiring another editor just to kind of make some of the Art the Clown kill scenes a little tighter, and also some of the other sequences tighter as well, because I think he lets things play out a little bit too long, so it definitely affects the overall flow of the movie. The music by Paul Wiley, I thought he did for the most part a wonderful job, especially when it comes to what he was asked to do. I liked a lot of the stuff that other artists did for the film. I like the Ice Nine Kills song. I love the Terrifier Christmas. Terrifier Christmas is like a really catchy, warped Christmas tune. And I love it. It reminds me of the tracks from the Tales from the Crypt Christmas album, which I am a huge fan of. So really enjoyed that. That was just some really great dark humor, and it was a well composed theme as well. And yeah, it's like 125 minutes, and at points it does drag a little bit. I have to be honest, for the reasons that I've detailed throughout this video, but it's a film that I would say is definitely worth a watch if you're a fan of slasher films. This is one of the bloodiest, goriest slasher movies of all time. Like, if you're looking for a slasher that is going to make your jaw drop to the floor in terms of the blood and gore, Terrifier 3 is the slasher film for you. I can't say that I loved Terrifier 3 like other people have said already, or other people do, but I did enjoy it. I did like it, and I do recommend it if you can handle it. If you can handle the gore, if you can handle the intensity of it, I think it's definitely worth watching. Um, but yeah, that's just my thoughts on Terrifier 3. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.